Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
This episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Didn't file with TurboTax last year? That's in the past. Now, Taxes is getting the TurboTax app and filing your own taxes for free if you didn't file with them last year. File by February 18th. All tax forms, all 100% free. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. New filers and filers who didn't use TurboTax last year only must start and file your own taxes in-app by February 18th. Excludes TurboTax Live. Full terms at TurboTax.com.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. We are headed to the real part of the baseball playoffs. The gimmicky first weekend is over, and here to talk about all of that is Bally, MLB, National Baseball writer David Brown. David, how are you?
I'm fighting through a cold, Andy, but I'm going to get through it.
Are you fighting? Are you PHIGHTIN?
I did pick the Phillies in that round, so yes.
I also identified them as the Cardinals were the team in the division champ in the most peril in the first round. I guess there were only two.
They were perilled and pilloried.
There were only two, and the other one won. The Cleveland Guardians managed to get out of the first round. Let's start with the Cardinals and the Phillies, because Cub fans really enjoyed that. As per my normal tradition, I did not watch any of it. I just wanted to. I was sending good vibes to the Phillies. But I could see it as I was, because it started. Game 2 started after Mets Padres, and they caught the Mets and Padres. So I could see the little score bug in the upper right hand corner of Mets Padres. So without watching the game, I could occasionally look up, and Phillies won that game 2-0. I saw a couple of times they had a runner at third and nobody out, did not score. And then late in the game, every inning, the Cardinals would get a runner on first. And I'm like, I just expected that Albert was going to hit a wall scraper and tie the game and send Bob Nightingale and everybody else into ecstasy. But he didn't. But I guess Albert and Yadi both got hits in their final at-bats. So that's what Cardinal fans will take away from their lost playoff appearance. They got to give standing ovations one last time to their two heroes.
Yeah, it was I'm sure an emotional moment for those guys, and Yadi was tearing up a little bit after the game. And it didn't have anything to do with basketball. It was amazing.
Right. Well, I just found out that his point guard tore his Achilles.
Right.
Seconds before he walked out.
I'm sad about baseball, but really, that's what's got me eating me right now. Albert was. I wanted to check, and I didn't. Albert was a little upset after his hit, which he hit it really well, but he didn't get any air under it. A home run there would have tied it up, but it was just a single because it hit the stands as they jut out famously the new Busch Stadium, newish Busch
could've-
Stadium. So he was upset at that, or not getting the ball in the air, or something.
It could have rattled around the outfield for 10 minutes. It was still going to be a single for Albert.
Well, it did prevent the guy from going to third. So even if Albert had gotten on his horses, I don't think he was going anywhere. So, but so
I saw Yadi's last hit. He waffled a line drive to right center, the only place he's gotten a hit in the last 5 years. How are you not? Why is somebody not standing there? That's where Yadi's going to hit it.
They got the scouting reports. I don't know.
If he tries to pull it, actually, for Yadi. It really his final at bat. It should have been fitting. Should have been with a runner on first, a grounder to short, and they turn the double play, and Yadi doesn't appear in the picture when they show. That guy hasn't run more than 8 feet on a double play in like 6 years. He just takes 2 steps out of the box, and he just takes a right turn, starts putting his shin guards on. Actually, I'm surprised he didn't just play in the shin guards the last few years. It's like, you know what a pain in the ass it is to buckle these things? I'll just wear them. I'm not running anywhere. It'll be fine.
As a Little League coach, I can attest to this. Just getting them on someone else.
So in game 1, you had talked about it last week about Ryan Helsley's bum finger.
Yeah.
And his control completely abandoned him in the 9th inning, which I guess was his second inning of work. He had come in the 8th.
Yeah, it wasn't a full inning, a full second inning, but he had gotten an out and whatnot in the 8th inning after a rally had started.
And the great Oliver Marmol stood motionless in the dugout while Ryan threw balls that bounced off the backstop. He basically did a Rick Ankiel impression for 3 batters before he took him out. Wouldn't you think if you got a pitcher who was hurt that you might be like, all right, this shit could go south at any moment. We better have somebody else ready. But no, they didn't.
You're right. I mean that's why they. I'm not saying that Mike Schultz would have done the same thing, but I think they wanted the newer manager to be a little more on top of stuff like that, and that's why they made one of the reasons they made the change in the first place. So,
well, Marmol outdid Schultz this year, though. He lost 2 wildcard games. Schultz only lost 1 last year.
You're not wrong about that.
Cardinals are now 1-9 in their last 10 playoff games. That's terrible. But I mean, they got a tough draw in the Phillies. The Phillies are red hot. They've now won 9. If you include the wild card series, they've now won 9 of their last 22 games this year. So, how are you supposed to fight off a juggernaut like that?
It was a tough matchup from the standpoint of their starting pitchers are good. Those guys are really good. Those are 2 of the best starting pitchers in the postseason. Right.
And that's why you and I both basically said that the Phillies had a good shot because their starters, they only had to use, if they won the first 2 games, they only had to use those 2 guys.
Right.
And they were far better than Jose Quintana started game 1 for the Cardinals on merit. It's like, oh, that's a bad sign. The great Adam Wainwright did not make an appearance, correct?
Dead arm. I guess that's what I heard after the fact. I didn't know about that necessarily when we talked the last time, but his numbers in the last month of the season were kind of dead armish, so it makes sense. But
do you think if they had made the second round that he would have, in full uniform, sat in the Fox booth with AJ Przinsky and Adam Amin, and then Marmol would have to call up there if he wanted him to go down to the bullpen to warm up?
It would have been good for the broadcast. I like his country insights.
There's got to be a 97% chance that when the games start on Tuesday that he's in that booth, right? He did it last year. They lost the wild card game, and there he was. He showed up.
Right.
So he's sitting up there. I'm glad we lost. This is a lot more fun. That's great. Yeah. The MVP candidates for the Cardinals, Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado combined to go 1 for 15.
Nolan had one pretty good fly ball that he thought was going to leave, and it didn't. And he hit it over 100 miles an hour. I went to look it up, but other than that, not a whole lot going on. Not a whole lot of bad luck. It was just good pitching and pretty lame swings.
Now he's going to opt out, but everyone's expectations are he will simply work out a new contract with the Cardinals. One that I'm sure the Cardinals will somehow find a way for the Rockies to pay half of. Just out of habit. But, the Cubs the Cubs are going to have a... Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say the Rockies just might just send money because they're kind of dopes.
Yeah. How much of Nolan's new contract do we owe? I don't know. Just send him a blank check. Okay, good. That's fine. The Cubs need a third baseman. Or maybe the Cardinals will just bring Patrick Wisdom back. That could happen.
That'd be a great trade.
Hey, 53 home runs in the last 2 years for Patrick Wisdom.
Sell it.
And only 330 strikeouts. Is that...
It's only, 40% of his at-bats? More?
Yeah. Well, he had an injury this year. He could have really put that number out of range. But that's unfortunate. One thing I don't get about the playoffs is these playoffs are seeded. And ESPN even insisted on putting the number of the seed next to the team in their scorebug.
Yeah.
And so you would expect then, okay, well, the Phillies, the 6th seed, they're advancing to the second round, so they will play the Dodgers, the 1st seed, right?
Well, we can't do that.
No, God, no. So the seeds are meaningless because they are playing the Braves, and the Dodgers are getting the Padres, who upset the Mets. And they've already played 19 times. The Dodgers have won 14 of the first 19. So I'm really looking forward to more of that. That'll be fun. However, someone may remind people that the 2015 Cubs were 7-0 against the Mets in the regular season, and then got swept. I don't think that's going to repeat itself.
I don't think it is either. But I suppose it's possible it could be competitive. I suppose. Maybe. If something happens to the Dodgers bad.
It could happen. I mean, for all their excellence of the last, since what, like 2014? They only have one World Series, and it's the weird COVID-neutral site one.
A shorty.
I don't even think it counts. I don't count it. I don't recognize it. I refuse.
Although they played more playoff games that year than you typically do. So there's that.
And Corey Seager liked it so much in Texas. He didn't stay. He had to play the Dodgers for a few more years. Then found a big bag of cash there. I guess across the parking lot. So there was some interesting stuff happened in that Mets series. Max Scherzer basically threw batting practice in Game 1. The Buck brought in his closer to pitch. We was going to try to get 3 innings out of him in Game 2. And Alfonso Marquez got to molest Joe Musgrove's ears in Game 3.
That made me uncomfortable a little bit.
I mean, I give him credit. He didn't do like a there's that famous like GIF of the guy barely patting someone down on their way into a concert. It's just kind of like this. Alfonso, he had his thumb basically went in Joe's right ear. Just
right.
He was
technically a cavity search. That was a little desperate on the part of Buck Showalter to request that.
Well, Joe, I wondered if he was checking Twitter in the dugout, because Joe's shiny ears were all over. People wanted to know. And did you see Andrew McCutcheon had a theory?
I did see that.
I don't understand why. I mean, this is like Eddie Harris. You put jalapeno in your nose. You put snot on the ball. You got an arm like yours. Andrew's theory was that he put like atomic fireball or whatever, that stuff you put on stiff muscles, all over his ears.
I thought it was red. Was it Red Hot?
Oh, Red Hot. Yeah.
Yes.
I
thought, isn't that, don't you eat that?
Is that what they were? From the Ferrara Pan Candy Company? He was just...
Not Red Hot. Not the Chula sauce or whatever it is. I don't know.
It was like sriracha? He's rubbing sriracha on his ears? Oh, now it wouldn't have been great if Alfonso had licked his ear.
Frank's Red Hot? I thought it was Frank's Red Hot, so it was like a condiment.
That's the one that Eli Manning did the commercial. I'll put that shit on anything. That stuff?
Yeah.
Is that really what he meant? They put that on there to what? Make their ears sweat so they get more moisture?
That was my interpretation. Maybe I've got the substance wrong, but yeah, and
why the ears?
Yeah,
strange.
I don't know. Well, because you can't really reach. I don't know, because the nose would be too irritating and would interfere with the pitching. The ears, maybe you can just get jazzed but not too jazzed. I'm imagining like Herman Munster. No, not Herman Munster, but Grandpa Munster with steam coming out of his ears now.
I wonder if you have to reapply it.
Yeah, that spoon will wear off at some point.
Well, whatever it was. Yeah, so it was the sixth inning, I think, when Buck finally gave in and went out.
Yes.
The Mets had one hit at the time, and that's how many they finished with. So not a great 3 days for the Mets. They won 101 games, and they're already home. As someone pointed out on Twitter, that the Cardinals, not only did they win as many playoff games this year as the Cubs, they only scored in one more at bat than the Cubs did. It's the great Juan Yepez's 2-run homer in Game 1. But they did give up the 6 runs they gave up in the 9th inning of Game 1. That was the biggest final inning comeback in any postseason game since the Cubs beat the Giants in Game 4 of the 2016 NLDS. So, there you go. I'll do whatever I can to wedge 2016 Cub trivia into every situation.
Well, it makes it relatable.
Yeah. So you think Trent Grisham is enjoying these playoffs more than he did the wild card game when the Brewers played the Nationals?
Yeah, I hope so.
And he went for the sinking line drive that is still rolling through the DC suburbs.
And didn't he come in as a backup or a reserve?
Came in for defense.
Yeah, right.
Yep. He is a good defense. He's an excellent defensive outfielder.
He is. I mean, that's why he's out there. It certainly isn't for hitting 187 or 184, but.
David Cohn made some. They showed the scoreboard. Grisham this year had the lowest batting average of any player who qualified for the batting title, 184.
Yeah.
And the Mets put his season stats on the board for every at bat, not updating the postseason numbers. And David Cohn seemed to think they were trying to psych him out. It's like, is he checking the scoreboard? Am I still batting? What am I batting now? Oh, I'm still batting 184. Well, I better get another hit.
I thought math didn't work that way. I thought I went up.
Wait a minute. What are all these? Why do I even bother to get hits? My batting average doesn't change.
Maybe I have so many at bats that it just takes longer. It takes 2 hits to go up.
The Padres shortstop. What's his name?
Ha-Seong Kim.
Hassan. That's right. I thought when I first heard his name, I thought his name was Hassan.
Hassan, right?
Kim. I'm like, oh, is he?
Yeah, he's Middle Eastern and Far Eastern.
That's right. Like, wow. Carl Ravitch was wondering if when Fernando Tatis returns next year, if he will play the outfield because of this guy, and he said that was going to be the plan if he had been suspended for the season for PEDs. And I thought Carl was leaving out one important piece of information, which was that Fernando's shoulder has fallen off, and he had not yet had the surgery because he was coming back to try to play. Isn't that why he was going to play outfield instead of shortstop?
Yeah, well, I think it was, and this could be, correct me if this is what you mean, but I think it was to playing shortstop, diving, and all that.
I kept hurting him.
Which you do in the outfield too, but to prevent a future recurrence of the injury,
right?
Make it less likely. Hello, dog.
Well, he's whining, so he's gonna have to sit up here for a minute.
So that was my impression, that they were putting him in the outfield to. I
didn't think it was because Kim is so good that they're like, well, he's supplanted Tatis now at short. We got to find a different spot.
Well, his overall hitting numbers are average, but last year, which was his first year or second year, I mean, he was terrible hitter last year. Had a hard time adjusting from the Korean League. This year, a little bit better than average and way better than average defense. So, I think it's maybe a little bit of both, but yeah, too, the shoulder and the uncertainty with the situation there. I don't know if Tatis is going to be always not at short, but they certainly have the option to DH him or put him in the outfield or do something else with him, with Kim playing at least average on offense and above on defense.
Well, if they want to turn Fernando into a full-time center fielder, the Cubs haven't had a good full-time center fielder since the 40s. So if they want to pay like 2/3 of his salary, the Cubs could probably give them a superstar like David Bodie in exchange. I mean, I don't want to do that job for him, but I might go for that.
The Padres would be like, boating? Well, we do that here.
Yeah, boating. That's right. We got a marina. We got lots of marinas.
Right. We even trade you a guy named Marina. He's in Double-A.
So the Padres will play the Dodgers, the Braves and the Phillies. So you've got both matchups have already been played 19 times this year. nothing like exciting variety in the playoffs. But still, baseball knows what it's doing, or so we're told. Have the Guardians and Rays scored yet?
It still might be going on. It's it was certainly a little bit good pitching, a little bit not the best hitters in the world, frankly, on display. So I haven't seen like a super duper saber breakdown of, was this the best pitching ever, or just hitters not having much of a clue. The Rays had a lot of injuries, and they weren't going into it anyway with their best possible lineup one way or another. So the Guardians were in good shape there. I think the Guardians will have to hit a little better than that to beat the Yankees.
The Rays scored 1 run in 24 innings in the playoffs. It doesn't seem like a lot. Hard to win more than one game if you score 1 run total. There's my math fact for you.
Your mantra and your mathra. Yeah. No, it's definitely not. It's not going to happen very easily. I think which is funny because, last year the Rays were one of the better, surprisingly, one of the better offensive teams. But this year, Austin Meadows had a very strange season, and maybe some of it related to his mental health, and they just didn't have any hitting in the first place. So, and Randy Arozarena usually goes crazy in the postseason, but you keep him out, you keep him down, and the Rays. Wander Franco is maybe had like one good week since he came back from his hamate injury. They were kind of fighting with one arm tied behind their back. So
yeah, because that was a strange. It was the first. Was it the last week of spring training when they traded Meadows to the Tigers? And you thought, well, they must have somebody.
Right. The Rays always are full of surprises with these guys.
Yeah, we're still waiting.
Right.
Still waiting to find out who that somebody is. And then the other series, the Blue Jays and Mariners, the Blue Jays lost game 1, but came out and got a nice big 8-1 lead in game 2. So you're already making plans for Sunday, and they didn't win. Not only that, George Springer and Bo Bichette tried to reenact the Mike Cameron. Who did Mike Cameron run into? With the Mets?
Was it Jose? Oh no, I don't remember.
You would have thought I didn't know that before I referenced it. Why do that?
It's Carlos Beltran.
Yeah, Carlos Beltran and Mike Cameron.
It's a life-threatening collision.
Headline: Beltran happy that I'm alive after outfield collision. I wonder if he had to go into the hospital, if he would have asked them to take that mole off the. Like that.
While you're here.
Yeah.
While I'm here.
Is that a scalpel? Could you scrape this thing off where my sideburn is? Yeah. That's been distracting people for 10 years. No, you don't have a copay for that, Carlos. Sorry.
Maybe the White Sox will, when the White Sox interview him, we'll get to ask him that question for real.
Good.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Springer had to leave the game on a cart. Never got signed. And Bo Bichette stayed in. But they were no match for the big dumper and the Mariners. Cal Raleigh, who had hit we talked about this last week, the first ever pinch hit walk-off division or playoff clinching home run, continued his big moment excellence with some big hits in the 2 games, and that's his nickname, the Big Dumper, which I enjoy very much.
It does look like he would take a big dump. He's got.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's because he's got such a big butt.
Right.
Is that really why? Are we sure? Maybe that's what they tell you guys, but I'm guessing if your nickname is the Big Dumper, there's a plunger involved somewhere, and that's somewhere in the origin of that nickname. Ugh. So our American League matchups are Mariners-Astros, Guardians-Yankees. And those games are on TBS. Did you see who the announcer, the play-by-play announcer for Indians-Yankees is? I didn't say Mets today. Indians-Yankees.
Guardians.
I said Indians, so I may have just screwed that up. Yes.
You said Indians at least twice.
Good. That's like, it's Columbus Day. So I'm just Breaking out all the offensive things I can. I apologize to our Native American friends. Guardians-Yankees.
I forgot. I know Ron Darling and
Ron Darling, Lauren Shahadi, and Bob Costas.
That's right, Bob Costas. He's happy to be back, he says.
He is.
Although, doesn't Bob Costas do a playoff series every year? Maybe he doesn't, but it seems like he does.
They made a big deal. Richard Deitch wrote a thing on The Athletic about it. They made a big deal out of the fact he's getting the full series.
Oh.
He has announced parts of it. In fact, he announced he did game 2 of, here we go, of the 2016 NLDS Cubs Giants.
Well, that always goes back to them.
And I actually had a highlight in the other day that I shared because Travis Wood had to come in to relieve Kyle Hendricks, who'd been hit in the forearm with a line drive. So Wood got an at-bat and became the first relief pitcher in like 70 years to hit a homer. And
right.
Bob completely missed it. In fact, when you find the clip online of Bob's call of it, he's calling the replay because there is no live call of him actually calling the home run. But there is a Pat Hughes one. Pat's all over it. You can get Pat's call of it, but not Bob's. Yeah, and he did. I think Bob did a game last year, so he's no stranger to playoff baseball in recent years. But he gets the entire series, so he's very excited. And it's funny though when I hear Bob do baseball, I wax nostalgic for the old NBC Saturday Game of the Week, where he was on the number 2 team with Tony Kubek, and then Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola were the main attraction. Bob and Tony famously did the Sandberg game. And whenever Marquee shows that like 11 times a week. So if you want to get a Bob Costas fill, you could just turn on Marquee, and at some point between the Prevagen commercials, you'll get to hear Bob and Tony call a very exciting game where Willie McGee was the player of the game because he hit for the cycle, and Ryan Sandberg hit 2 game-tying home runs. It's the Dave Owen game. It's not the Ryan Sandberg game.
The Dave Owen game.
Dave's winning. He got the game-winning hit. It's all Sandberg did was tie it twice. Big whoop.
The Sandberg game. Some call it the Suter game, but it should be the Dave Owen game.
Yeah, it's really the Dave Owen game. I mean, they'd still be playing if it wasn't for him. All right, so we have our final 4 series set already. Well, first, what'd you think of the wild card best 2 out of 3 and the format, the all games in one city?
I think I liked it, or I didn't dislike it. I guess I like that. I think doing traveling, I don't think there would have been a fair way to travel and have some team have a one game. I don't think, if I could collect my thoughts finally, I think it wouldn't make sense to do it any other way. It wouldn't make more sense to do it any other way. To give one team 2 home games and then take them on the road for the last game seems like a kind of a waste and also unfair. I think it's just better to play the games the way they did in one city. I think that's fine. Whatever you want to do with the playoffs, I don't even, care that much. So I think I'm someone who likes to watch the regular season. I like to watch the playoffs, but how they do the playoffs mostly doesn't matter to me. I will deal with the drama however it comes. It doesn't need to be changed around to make it more exciting for me. Maybe there's some for other people in the demographics watching, there's a better way to do it. I'm not sure what that is, and I'm fine with this format that they'll change again probably in 4 years.
Yeah. The thing I found interesting about it is that they keep looking for ways to manufacture Game 163s. They love Game 163s, and they couldn't count on them happening often enough.
Yeah.
So they came up with the wild card game, one and done. They got one of those in each league, and that created some drama. And then they thought, oh, what if we could get more? But one of the weird things they did this year, and I guess they have to, just because of the schedule, is they literally eliminated the possibility of any Game 163s.
Yes.
They went with the awful regular season record tiebreaker between two teams. They didn't have to use it, but it's there. So they're in their effort to manufacture Game 163s, they have eliminated real Game 163s, which is strange. Right. As far as the format goes, only one of the home teams won.
Right.
Only the Guardians. The three road teams advanced. So I'm sure that will spawn some think pieces about how it's actually better. It's actually better to be the road team in that wild card.
I mean, I guess you get used to the environment a little bit. By the second game, it's not as intimidating, and we didn't have a lot of third games, but presumably it would be less so. I don't know. But then in the third game, you have kind of that game 163 feeling because it's winner take all. So.
Well, and then in the one, it was the Mets. It was so loud when they were pitching that PitchCom wasn't working. It was their own crowd.
And you can't tell them to be quiet because I guess you could, but
they should have borrowed. The Bears famously have an offensive work sign that they put up to get us moronic fans from cheering too loudly when the Bears have the ball. So they should have had one at the Mets game to quiet the fans. But I mean, we're Bear fans. We just get excited. They have the ball. You're going to have the ball for like the next 42 seconds. Let's all cheer.
Right.
Actually, what we're doing is we're just getting excited for the punt. We're revving ourselves up for the punt.
Our best weapon.
All right. So, Dodgers Padres. Do you think the Padres have a shot?
I mean, they have a shot, but it's like not a really good shot. No.
I agree.
They could. I think they have a shot to make it somewhat of an interesting series, but I feel like the Dodgers with a little rest, maybe they can take advantage of that. The Dodgers being dormant for a week, coming in, stealing the game. It is a 5-game series. It's a short series. But if they don't win the first game, the Dodgers probably will have all the bugs worked out, and that will end any kind of momentum shift that could result.
Yeah. So the format of the Wild Card Series was basically invented to reward the teams with the byes, in that the pitching staffs of the team coming in this case the Padres, and then the other matchup in the National League, the Phillies, are in disarray. And so, like, the Phillies especially will go to Atlanta, and they will not enjoy the same advantage they had against the Cardinals because they will not be able to pitch. Wheeler and Nola probably, they get Wednesday off, so Thursday maybe they could go back to Wheeler for Game 2. So that's where it was specifically designed that way. That's why everybody is playing on Tuesday.
Yeah.
The whole idea that they wanted that to be the advantage you got with the bye is a lack of rest for your opponent. So instead of giving one of the leagues the potential of 2 days off, if you wrapped it up early, which both American League teams did, everybody has to play on Tuesday. So similarly, the Phillies and the Braves, do we see any reason why the Braves, who just keep signing all their good young players to like 9-year contracts, they signed Spencer Strider. Is there any? Do we think the Phillies can make that a series?
You went off on a little tangent there about the contracts that the Braves are signing, and I looked at Ozzie Albies' contract, and it sort of pales in comparison to the rest of these.
Yep. Well, he went first, right?
Deals.
It doesn't pay to go first. Everybody makes more than you after that.
And he's hurt, and they don't expect him to play in this round. So, yeah, I don't. They certainly don't. They certainly don't have the advantage of having, their like you said, their best pitchers go early. So it's going to be another case of if these teams come in and can steal, an early game, maybe they have a chance. I think the Phillies have a better chance against the Braves just because I think they're probably a little better team than the Padres. So, but other than that, other than getting away with an early surprise victory, I think they're going to have trouble. And I think that's, it isn't like basketball or whatever where you have your best players going in every game. And so that's, I think back to like Michael Jordan before the Bulls won championships, and they would beat teams that had better records than them during the regular season in the playoffs because they'd get up on them in an early game. Jordan would go off or whatever, and they get an advantage, and then it would come down to the game 5, and the Bulls would have the best player, and they'd win. So that's sort of how they built themselves back into champions. In baseball, it's just different because you don't have Wheeler and Nola available at every game, and so you need a lot more breaks to pick up an upset like that. So, I think the Braves and the Dodgers are probably safe in this round.
Yeah, I agree with that. And besides, anything to make my old buddy Chip Carey happy. That makes me happy. So in the American League, Guardians-Yankees, everybody's, oh my God, the Yankees haven't been good for months. Blah, blah, blah. And they have to, Aroldis Chapman didn't show up for the workout, so he's not even on the postseason roster, despite the fact that he probably wouldn't have made it. That could have been the reason why he didn't show up for the workout.
That's what I was expecting to hear, yes. That they're like, well, we don't think you're going to.
So bad after his infected tattoo that he probably at least thought it was a possibility that they were going to leave him off. I just assumed he went to the garage for some target practice. Have you heard any commotion in the garage? Maybe Aroldis is home. No? Okay. All right. So yeah,
I do think
go ahead.
that there is an opportunity, maybe the best opportunity for an upset is Cleveland and New York because you mentioned Chapman, and the Yankees also have other. They have Zach Britton hurt, and they had Clay Holmes hurt. He's back now, but we'll see how he is. So they have, they got lots of bullpen depth, but their roles are kind of all shuffled and all who knows because of injuries here since the last few games of the regular season. So the Yankees have a little bit up in the air, and they also starting pitching looks pretty good, but then again, Garrett Cole hasn't. It has a little bit off his fastball in the past month or so, and in his last several starts, has given up a bunch of home runs. So, not that the Guardians are necessarily big home run hitters, but as they showed in the playoffs, you turn around a couple of pitches and you get some home runs, and it changes the course of a game. That's why people like home runs, obviously. So. I think there's a possibility that the Yankees could get got in this round, much more so than the National League Series, and even the Seattle and Houston. Seattle's got a lot of momentum, and maybe Dusty will do something silly.
Oh, but not Dusty. I can't imagine.
But the Astros handled the Mariners pretty well in the regular season, so you would think that they would be as good a shape as anybody, too. So I think maybe the Guardians are, if you're into the underdog thing, hope for an upset.
And Guardians-Yankees is the only non-divisional matchup in the playoffs, which is weird. Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Guardians and their the advantage that their announcers thought they'd have coming into the playoffs is that they make contact. Of course, it also advantage you don't have to make a whole lot of contact when your opponent's only going to score 1 run in 2 games.
Right.
That helps a little bit. Yeah, and with Houston and the Mariners, when was do we know when the last time a team batted out of order in the playoffs was? we did a thing when we were doing Remember This Crap for the 2004 Cubs, and that was the Cubs batted out of order against the Reds early in the season. And I remembered at the time that, I remembered later when Dusty went to the Reds, they had an incident where they batted out of order. And I looked it up, and no team had done it since Dusty's Cubs. And I thought, well, Dusty has a niche. in an era when when everybody's scoreboard, maybe they didn't at Wrigley, maybe that's why. When everybody's scoreboard actually has the lineup on it, Dusty can still find players who can't read their own names on the scoreboard and don't know which order to bat in. So that would be fun. And there's Cub connections with both managers. Scott Service, of course, a former Cub catcher. Dusty, a former Cub manager. Scott Service
was there, that 98 team.
He did the single toughest
Wasn't
thing.
He? Or was he gone by then?
When did Scotty leave? He hung around like a bad penny for a while. He did the single toughest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, he was still there. I think he caught Tapani's near shutout in the playoffs. Javi Lopez hit a home run. The Braves told the Cubs to go home. But Service tagged out a runner, had a home plate collision. He got nailed by a runner and was kind of laying on the ground, and the another runner on the bases tried to go to third base, and Service grabbed the ball and threw him out at third base. And then missed like the next 6 weeks because he had separated his throwing shoulder on the collision. Right. He threw a guy out with a separated shoulder. That's pretty good. He batted like he had both shoulders separated at all times. That was. But he was part of one of the great trades in Cubs history. Get that. I think it's just the 3 guys, right? Yes, it was him and Luis Gonzalez for Rick Wilkins. Rick Wilkins had hit 30 homers and driven in like 34 runs one year. And was that a great? That was an Ed Lynch trade, right? Might have been Ed's only goal.
95. Yeah, I think so.
Yep. Yeah. So Julio Rodriguez is wearing a back brace.
I've seen it, yeah.
Does he wear it?
Looks like an old person's.
Is it like a copper fit? Is he going to be doing commercials now with Jerry Rice? I mean, Brett Favre ain't going to be doing commercials for Copper Fit anytime soon. So maybe Julio can get them Copper Fit money.
You know, it's not something that I don't think that he wears when he's hitting, because I've seen him in the dugout and it's like, a corset. So, and that's during a game. And I don't think that's. I don't know if he has anything underneath too. Maybe it would be too restrictive, but
he's playing center, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not like he's just arresting him. Just DH, keep a little heat on the back, and take your 4 whacks. He's actually playing. What could go wrong?
I think it's maybe just a way to keep warm and to keep. Girded, when you're not doing the athletic thing. So, but it's something to worry about. Speaking of, we talked about the long-term contracts that the Braves doled out, and they signed the Mariners signed Julio to one, and apparently he's got back problems. So,
That's not good.
No.
All right, so best chance of an upset, we think, is Guardians-Yankees.
Yes.
Something's going to happen. These things rarely ever go chalk.
Yes, but I was thinking about this too. People kind of enjoyed the playoffs, and we were talking about, is the format right and all that. If I recall correctly, and maybe I don't, last year's playoffs were pretty boring. So, but it's just one of those things where you never know. And you don't know if it's because if the format has something to do with it, or it's just the matchups, or the teams just kind of aren't that good.
Wasn't it Joaquin Andahar who said you can summarize baseball up in one word? You never know.
You never know.
Yep.
That's right. So I guess what I'm saying is it very well could just be the chalk.
Yeah. Well, and I think especially in this round now, the wild card the new format is basically set up to disadvantage those teams.
Right.
So maybe that's the whole point.
Well, as a person, a defender of the regular season, as I am, I guess I like that the teams that are waiting and were made to wait have an advantage because of it. So, I guess.
I will just say, as a Cubs fan, I want, especially this year, I want the teams with the best records to advance the farthest. Because the last thing I want is for the garbage family that owns the Cubs to go, hey, the Phillies only won 87 games and they won the World Series, so we don't need to go out and find all these really good players. Jed, you just got to put together an 87-win team and we'll win the World Series next year. It's like, no, you had to win 111 games this year to win the World Series. You got to go out and you got to build a 112-game winner, Jed. That's what we want.
Yeah, the Royals kind of think like that too. The previous owner and the new guy, they haven't spent any money in about 5 years, and it shows. The Royals haven't been any good, and they're Mike Matheny is out as the manager, and they're getting a new pitching coach. And it's funny, before the season, the Royals were thinking, well, maybe we'll be competitive or 500, or maybe that's the same thing in the AL Central. And then they weren't. And it's like, well, that's one of the reasons why we had to change managers. But it also turns out that we were wrong. We weren't really that close to being competitive anyway. And now we're not going to be competitive next year. So we're not going to spend this offseason either. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouth a little bit, not wanting to spend the money. We were wrong about our own evaluations, that the team was closer to being good than it is. So it's just kind of circular logic. They're not. It would be more interesting for fans for the Royals teams like the Royals to add a pitcher or two to be competitive and to have more of an interesting regular season and to, alongside the Bobby Witts of the world. But we're still going to be on the austerity program here until further notice, until they get closer, until the players show us. It's not our fault.
Yeah, right.
It's not the front office's fault that we didn't give the players enough. The players, the young kids that we have on the field, if they can overachieve a little bit and show us something, then we'll spend money and help out. That's the thought process.
So in Chicago, the first three candidates supposedly for the White Sox job are Bruce Bochy, the energy vampire Mike Schilt, and Carlos Beltran. Are there any thoughts yet in Kansas City about who the Royals will be going after?
Well, they figured that it would be, they've said that anybody and everybody is really on the list. It's a huge list. This is how they put it. J.J. Piccolo, the GM, now that Dayton Moore is gone, he's like, there's a lot of candidates. It's going to be a long process. We're going to get it right. We're not going to be quick about it. It's not something that's going to be done by the day after the World Series, probably. Well, it probably will be something that will be done before free agency starts. He said, that's their deadline.
We got to have somebody before April Fool's Day. When I get one, we'd like to get a manager before the season starts. That's our goal. So in that long list are Trey Hillman and Jace Tingler anywhere on those lists?
Trey Hillman again. I don't know.
People recycle their own managers from time to time.
Yeah. Jamie Quirk.
I was trying to push the White Sox for Mike Quaddy. I think Quaddy would make an excellent Royal manager.
I'm sure you were. Maybe there's a guy, Joe Espada, Dusty's right-hand man in Houston, who's got some analytics in his blood and hasn't been a manager at the big league level, but is a guy that they always talk about. Well, this bench coach guy, he's going to be maybe one of the next good young managers in the league when somebody gives him a chance. So
I was waiting to see which Chicago writer would write the laziest column about the White Sox managerial search, and I thought it was going to be David
yeah.
Still writes. He writes for the Score website, which doesn't really count, but it ended up being Steve Greenberg of the Sun-Times, who basically said, the White Sox should hire Joe Madden. It's like, well, I got news for you, Steve. He's probably not that interested, and they're not calling anyway. So it's just not going to work.
And it's Bobby Nightingale, so who knows, but I don't see any reason why Bruce Bochy would want to come to the White Sox. I mean, I don't know if Bruce Bochy wants to manage anymore. I don't even know.
I assume that when he didn't even really want the Padres job, talk about bringing a guy back, because there were definite connections there, that probably meant he just wasn't going to manage again.
Yeah.
And he still has a house. He still
why
lives
would he
in
want to
San
come to
Diego.
the White Sox?
Yeah, there's no connection there other than, hey, this guy's going to the Hall of Fame. We should interview him, and then it'll elevate whoever we pick. Because look, we interviewed Bruce Bochy for this job. Look how serious we were.
Do the White Sox know who the GM is yet? I mean, I know it's Rick Hahn, but
do we know who's actually hiring the manager? Is that what you're asking?
Who? Yeah, is he going to be there? Who is hiring the person? I mean, is Kenny? Is there? What's going on? Yeah. I mean, that's one reason why. One very good reason why Bochy or anybody like that wouldn't want to come there. Well,
John,
they're confused. The White Sox are very confused right now.
John Paxton's still getting paid by the Reinsdorfs. Maybe they'll just make him be the general. Hey, John, you want to be the general manager of the White Sox? Sure. All right, good.
Kind of like a Jerry Krause scenario.
Yep. If you can scout a basketball player, you can scout a baseball player. What's the difference? So on Monday, the Jed Hoyer, the vice president of baseball nonsense for the Cubs, gave his the Cubs billed his end of the season press conference. And I thought, well, we could have done that in April. He came out and he talked for about 45 minutes with the weirdos that cover the Cubs on a daily basis. And there was some actual news in it. He confirmed something that it seems very obvious, but these are the Cubs, and so you never know how obvious these things are going to be. The Cubs are going to extend a qualifying offer to Willson Contreras, meaning that when someone else signs him, they will get a compensatory draft pick. I just think it would be funny if Willson accepts it. It's like, okay, $18.7 million, I'll take it. And then we get to say goodbye to him like 14 times this season. Nobody has ever gotten more farewell standing ovations than Willson, and not actually left. It's like the opposite of an Irish goodbye. Instead of sneaking out with no one knowing you're leaving, Wilson's like, I might. Goodbye, everybody. Okay, all right, I'll see you tomorrow. No, Willson, you have to go. And Patrick Mooney set up a question for Jed that Jed didn't take the bait on. He basically said, because there was they had a story about the Mets and Cubs talked about a trade that would have been David Robertson and Willson Contreras to the Mets. And the Mets apparently so stung by giving up the great Pete Crow Armstrong for 2 months of Javi Baez, we're like, oh, no, we can't do it. And so he basically what Mooney asked Jed today was, have you been watching the playoffs and watching some of these teams and wondering why none of them wanted to actually trade for Willson? And clearly was trying to get him to basically, say, well, maybe the Mets would have scored a few runs if Willson was in their lineup. Instead, Jed answered with a long-winded answer about the trade of Scott Effross to the Yankees for Hayden Wesneski, and how it's one of the rare true baseball trades, because it was a reliever with 5 years of control for a starting pitcher with 7 years of control. So it was simply it was a need for need. It wasn't like one team getting a guy with a lot of control for 2 months of some other player. And he went on and on about that. And I thought, Jed is just simply trying to run out the clock to get to the next question. Because no one has ever talked for more than 12 seconds about Scott Effross. But there we were. I would have just asked him, hey, Jed, remember what you got for Kyle Schwarber? And he could have sat there and went, what did we get for Kyle? Oh, nothing. So that was good. That was a guy they didn't give the qualifying offer to because they were worried Kyle was going to take it. So he has instead hit 40 whatever home runs this year and 30 last year, and that's great. But he couldn't play left field, and now there's a DH. So that worked out great for everybody.
Which we kind of knew was coming.
Yeah, so. Pretty much everybody knew was coming. In fact, they've had it 2 out of the last 3 years. That's right. Cubs have Franmil Reyes that solved all the problems.
Right.
He was hot for a week. Cubs
looked like they had turned him around.
Themselves on the back. Look at this, we did it. And then, now I see why the Guardians let him go. He seems like a hell of a guy. Everybody loves him.
Right.
But it's hard to employ a guy to only be your DH when he doesn't really hit. He's doing a lot of designating. He's not doing a lot of hitting. That's only half the job, Franmil. All right.
Okay.
I think we did it. Everybody's primed and ready now for the division series. 4 games on Tuesday. I hope the Phillies got their rest. They're kicking things off at 11 o'clock in the morning down in Atlanta. I'm sure they're not still hungover from 2 days ago. No, not those guys. All right. Well, thanks, Dave. We'll check in again during the playoffs and see how things are going.
All right, Andy. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Many of us have herpes.
I just wanted this to be over.